What is this P? Let's get this
Okay.
P.
I spoke earlier about Cosmarte,
Yeah.
the person who created the drug business
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
generated a lot of temporary wealth for himself. Temporary
yeah.
because it all went away.
Hmm.
Do you remember why he was so determined to get through prison?
Because he had a son, and he was also very overweight too. So
Right. The weight was necessary in some level to survive,
yeah,
because you don't want to be the guy that everybody thinks we're going to be picking on this guy in prison.
yeah,
And it was a secure prison. It was not one of the country club prisons that white collar criminals frequently go to.
yeah.
So his son became his purpose, as he describes it.
Oh, purpose.
P is for purpose. If we have a purpose, that purpose, and it's more than a mission statement. And we can also have a couple of things that are our purpose. Maybe it's our family. Maybe it's we'll work as hard as we have to because our family needs us. I
Yeah.
spoke earlier about immigrants that come over. You mentioned your family working 16 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
right? They had a purpose. And that purpose was related to my family needs me. I
Yeah.
can't afford to fail. So if I have to put in superhuman efforts to succeed, that purpose is going to get me there. Now, purpose applies on many levels. This is before your time, but interviews with American prisoners of in Vietnam after their release. There are interviews related to why some people survived and others didn't. And this goes back even further to the concentration camps of Nazi Germany.
That's interesting, right? Because they had a reason to keep fighting and keep going forward.
Yes, and there's a book called Man's Search for Meaning, one of the most difficult books I've ever read because the topic is so harsh,
Mm-hmm.
but also one of the best books I've ever read and appears frequently on best books ever written. It's by a psychiatrist by the name of Viktor Frankl. He and his wife were picked up, and as Jews, they were sent to the Auschwitz concentration camp. And they promised each other they would do whatever they could, whatever they needed to survive so that they could reunite after the war. She unfortunately was murdered, killed, I guess, the way so many, the majority of those prisoners were. He somehow survived. And that purpose, that promise he made, was one of the things that kept him going.
Yeah.
But as a psychiatrist, he was also very curious as to everything around him. Who else was surviving day after day? And he said luck was critical because if you had the bad luck to be selected to go to the gas chamber, there was nothing you could do. But if you had the good luck to be allowed to work yourself to death with starvation rations, but
Mm-hmm.
you were alive, which of those people had a better chance of survival? And he found another set of characteristics, purpose being the most important one of them, but there were others that help keep people alive.
Mm-hmm.
And little things like a sense of humor. The fact that there could be somebody at the
Yeah.
end of the day with all the death, the trauma, the pain, the suffering around them, who could make people laugh in the bunks.
Mm-hmm.
It lifted people's hearts and souls,
Yeah,
gave them
definitely.
the motivation to live. The beginnings of spring, to see grass come through what had been barren earth, snow covered, frozen. The beginnings of spring and the birds also cheered people up.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that some people, as stark as the conditions were, as hunger stricken as they were, would share their rations with somebody who was weaker and they were fearful would die of starvation if they didn't get something. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the types of experiences that help you get through that help you get through the worst of situations possible.
I can so
Purpose
see that happen.
is
I can
big.
so see how that works in a way. Because I guess if you don't have a purpose or why, for whatever you're doing, you're much more likely to quit and give up on it because there's nothing really propelling you to keep pushing and keep fighting for it.
Yeah. It's like if somebody is working for a startup, you have your founders, and maybe this is somebody who was hired to be the bookkeeper.
Yeah.
And the company's closing down, the founder might be doing everything possible to save it. The bookkeeper, who doesn't have this investment in it, whose
Yeah.
purpose isn't tied to the success of the company, might think, no big deal, I'm a bookkeeper,
Exactly. Yeah.
a
The
job
employees
anywhere.
didn't really care.
Right. So finding our purpose is critical. It helps people get through very trying health situations, by the way. If you're alone and you have the bad luck to be diagnosed with cancer,
Hmm.
survival is much harder than if you have a supportive family and friends who are by you saying, hey, come on, we're going to get you through this. You know
Yeah.
that. Don't you give up on me. So that's the P.